He found her frozen body curled beneath a rotting porch, blue lips barely moving, the snow already starting to bury her like a grave, and when he carried her lifeless weight back through the blizzard, every voice in town had whispered the same thing: she won't survive. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The wind screamed through the Colorado Rockies like something alive and angry, tearing at the pines and hurling snow sideways across the mountain pass. Jack Brennan stood at the window of his cabin, coffee mug warming his calloused hands, watching the storm roll in from the west. He'd seen storms before, lived through winters that buried trucks and collapsed roofs. But this one felt different, meaner, the kind that reminded you just how small you were against the mountain's fury. Jack was 47 years old, though the lines carved deep around his eyes made him look older. His beard had gone grey at the edges, and his hands bore the permanent stains of wood smoke and engine grease. He'd built this cabin himself 12 years ago, log by log, nail by nail, high enough up the mountain that most folks forgot he existed, and that's exactly how he wanted it. The clock on the wall read 6:15 in the morning. Outside, the world was still caught between night and dawn, that strange purple-grey light that made everything look like a memory. Jack finished his coffee, pulled on his heavy coat, and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit him like a fist. 20 degrees, maybe less. The kind of cold that found every gap in your clothing and reminded you that nature didn't care about your comfort or your plans. He had supplies to last another month, maybe 6 weeks if he was careful. But he needed fuel for the generator, and his radio had been acting up, which meant a trip down to Coldwater, the small mountain town nestled in the valley below, a town he avoided as much as possible. Jack loaded his pack, checked his rifle out of habit, and started down the trail. The snow crunched under his boots with each step, and his breath came out in thick clouds. The path was familiar, worn into his memory after 12 years of walking it. He knew every switchback, every rock formation, every tree that leaned just a little too far over the edge. It took him 2 hours to reach Coldwater. The town looked exactly as it always did, a handful of buildings clustered around a main street, pickup trucks parked at angles, smoke rising from chimneys into the grey sky. Miller's General Store sat at the corner, its wooden sign swinging in the wind. Jack pushed through the door, and the bell above jangled. The warmth inside hit him immediately, along with the smell of coffee and sawdust. 3 men stood near the counter, locals he recognized but didn't know by name. They glanced at him, nodded slightly, then went back to their conversation. Jack had a reputation in Coldwater, the hermit, the mountain man, the guy who'd run from something 12 years back and never came down, except when he had to. He grabbed what he needed: fuel canisters, batteries, coffee, canned goods. He was loading everything into his pack when he heard it. "Shame about that situation up on Ridgeline Road," one of the men said, shaking his head. "Ain't our business," another replied. "Social services will handle it." "If they can get through this storm," the first man said. "Road's already closed. Nobody's getting up there till Thursday at least." Jack's hands slowed on the zipper of his pack. He shouldn't care, shouldn't listen, but something in the tone made him pause. "That little girl's probably already gone," the third man muttered. "No heat in that cabin, no food. Rebecca just left her there and took off." Jack's chest tightened. He turned slightly, not looking directly at them, but listening harder now. "Kids what, 5? 6? Can't survive 3 days in this cold alone. Someone should check on her." "You want to drive up there in this weather? Road's a death trap. Besides, what are we going to do? We're not equipped for that." Still feels wrong. Lot of things feel wrong. Doesn't mean we can fix them. Jack paid for his supplies without a word, shouldered his pack, and walked out. The wind had picked up. Snow was falling harder now, thick flakes that stuck to everything. He stood on the wooden sidewalk for a long moment, staring at the mountains rising above the town. Ridgeline Road. He knew it. An old logging route that twisted up the eastern slope, barely maintained, lined with abandoned cabins from when the mill had still been running. Nobody lived up there anymore, nobody sane. He started walking toward his trail home, made it 30 feet before he stopped. A little girl. Alone. In this storm. Jack closed his eyes and saw another face, smaller, bright green eyes and blonde hair in pigtails. Emma, his daughter. She'd been 7 when the car hit the patch of ice, when the guardrail gave way, when his whole world went over the edge with her. He'd been a paramedic then, had saved dozens of lives, but he couldn't save his own daughter, and the weight of that failure had driven him up this mountain 12 years ago, where he could be alone with his grief and his guilt. Jack turned around and headed east, toward Ridgeline Road. The trail was worse than he'd expected. Snow had already covered the old logging road, and the wind tore at him with every step. He pulled his scarf tighter and kept moving, his boots sinking 6 inches deep with each stride. The storm was getting worse. Visibility dropped to maybe 20 feet, but he knew these mountains, knew how to read the land even when it was trying to kill you. It took him an hour to find the cabins. There were 5 of them, sagging structures with collapsed porches and broken windows. Most were clearly empty, doors hanging open, interiors filled with drifted snow. But the third one, set back from the road, still had its door closed. Jack approached slowly, every instinct screaming at him to be careful. He knocked. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. He moved around the side, checking windows. Most were too dirty to see through, covered in years of grime and spiderwebs. Then he heard it. A sound so faint, he almost missed it beneath the howl of the wind. A whimper. Weak. Barely human. Jack's heart kicked into overdrive. He moved faster now, circling the cabin until he found the back porch. Part of it had collapsed, creating a small gap beneath the remaining boards, and there, curled in the corner, was a tiny figure. She was so small, 6 years old maybe, wearing a thin jacket that was completely inadequate for the cold, one shoe missing, her dark hair matted with snow and ice. Her skin had a bluish tint, and her lips were nearly purple. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing was so shallow he could barely see her chest moving. "Jesus," Jack whispered. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the snow soaking through his pants. Hey, sweetheart, can you hear me?" No response. He pulled off his glove and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Her pulse was there but weak, thread-like. Her skin was ice-cold. Hypothermia, advanced stage. Jack's training kicked in immediately, the part of him that had been dormant for 12 years suddenly roaring back to life. He shrugged off his pack and pulled out the emergency blanket he always carried. He wrapped it around her carefully, then lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and he could feel how cold she was even through his coat. "I've got you," he said, even though she couldn't hear him. "I've got you now." Getting back to his cabin was the hardest thing Jack had done in years. The storm had reached full fury, and he was carrying 40 pounds of dying child while trying to navigate a mountain trail in near whiteout conditions. His shoulders screamed, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop. He talked to her the whole way, even though he knew she was unconscious. "Almost there, just a little further. You're going to be okay, I promise. Just hold on." The same words he'd said to Emma in the ambulance, the same promises he couldn't keep. By the time he reached his cabin, his legs were shaking and his face was numb from the cold. He kicked the door open and carried her inside, heading straight for the fireplace. He'd left it burning low when he'd departed that morning, and now he built it up quickly, adding logs until the flames roared. He laid her on the rug in front of the fire and started working. First, he checked her vitals again. Pulse still weak but present, breathing shallow, core temperature dangerously low. He needed to warm her, but he had to do it slowly, too fast, and her heart could stop. Jack pulled off her wet jacket and shoe, then wrapped her in dry blankets from his bed. He heated water on the stove and filled hot water bottles, placing them carefully near her torso and neck, avoiding her extremities, warming the core first, always the core first. He checked her over for injuries, no obvious broken bones, but she was covered in bruises, old ones yellowing at the edges, new ones dark purple. His jaw clenched. This wasn't just neglect. Someone had hurt this child. Her fingers and toes were the worst. pale white, almost waxy. Early frostbite. He wrapped them gently, knowing there was nothing more he could do for them right now except hope. "Come on, sweetheart," he murmured, brushing wet hair away from her face. "Come back. You're safe now. I've got you." Hours passed. Jack sat beside her, monitoring her breathing, adjusting the blankets, adding more wood to the fire. The storm raged outside, rattling the windows and howling down the chimney. But inside, the cabin was warm and quiet, except for the crackle of the flames. Around midnight, she made a sound, a small moan, barely audible. Jack leaned closer. "That's it, that's good. Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Her lips moved slightly, trying to form words, but nothing came out. "Don't try to talk," Jack said softly. "Just rest. You're safe here." He heated broth, chicken stock he'd made last week, and when it was warm but not hot, he tried to get some into her. Most of it dribbled down her chin, but a little made it past her lips. It was something. A small victory. By 2 in the morning, her color had improved slightly. The blue tint was fading, replaced by a pale pink. Her breathing had deepened. Jack allowed himself the smallest flicker of hope. He made himself coffee and sat back against the wall, watching her. She was so tiny, fragile, like a bird that had fallen from the nest. Dark hair, probably brown when it was clean. Delicate features. She looked nothing like Emma, but the protectiveness that surged through him was exactly the same. "Who left you out there?" he asked the silent room. "What kind of person abandons a child in a storm?" But he knew the answer. The same kind of person who drove drunk, who made selfish choices, who thought only of themselves. The world was full of them, and children paid the price. Jack's eyes burned with exhaustion, but he didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every few minutes, he checked her pulse, her breathing, her temperature, watched for any sign of decline. The textbook said the first 72 hours were critical with severe hypothermia. Anything could happen. Brain damage, cardiac arrest, organ failure. But she was still here, still fighting, and that had to mean something. At 4 in the morning, her eyes opened. Just for a second. Long enough for Jack to see they were brown, deep brown, like creek water in summer. They focused on him, confused and scared, and then closed again. "It's okay," Jack said quickly. "You're safe. I found you in the storm. You're in my cabin now. You're going to be okay." He didn't know if she heard him or understood, but he said it anyway. The fire needed more wood. Jack stood stiffly, his back protesting after hours on the floor, and fed the flames. Outside, the storm showed no signs of stopping. The snow was piling up against the windows, and the wind sounded like it was trying to tear the roof off. They were completely cut off now. No way down the mountain. No way to get help, even if he wanted to. It was just him and this dying child. Again. Jack returned to her side and pulled the blanket up around her shoulders. Her breathing hitched, and for a terrifying moment he thought she was choking. But then she settled, her chest rising and falling in a steadier rhythm. "That's it," he whispered. "Keep breathing. Keep fighting." He thought about the men in the general store. "She won't survive," they'd said. Like it was already decided. Like this little girl's life was already over, and there was no point in even trying. Jack had heard those words before, in hospital hallways, in ambulances, from doctors who'd given up before the fight was over. He'd hated those words then, and he hated them now. "You're going to survive," he told her, his voice rough. "I don't care what anyone says. You're going to make it. I'm not going to let you go." The same promise he'd made to Emma, but this time he had a chance to keep it. Dawn came slowly, the sky shifting from black to grey behind the wall of falling snow. Jack made more broth and managed to get a few spoonfuls into her. She swallowed reflexively, which was a good sign. Her body was responding, trying to heal itself. By noon on the first full day, her temperature had risen to 94 degrees. Still dangerously low, but better. Progress. Jack changed her blankets, checked her fingers and toes again. The frostbite hadn't worsened, which was something. He found himself talking to her constantly, even though she was unconscious. Telling her about the cabin, about the mountains, about the deer that came by in the evenings. Anything to fill the silence. Anything to remind himself that she was still alive. "I used to have a daughter," he said softly, adjusting the pillow under her head. Her name was Emma. She would have been 19 now. She had this laugh that could light up a whole room, and she loved animals, used to bring home every stray she found. He swallowed hard. "I couldn't save her, but I'm going to save you. I promise." The storm continued through the second night. Jack dozed in the chair beside her, waking every hour to check on her. Each time, his heart would seize until he saw her chest rise and fall. Each time, relief would wash over him so strongly it made him dizzy. On the morning of the second day, her fever spiked. Her forehead burned under his hand, and she started shaking violently. Jack's stomach dropped. Infection. Probably pneumonia from the exposure. He had antibiotics in his medical kit, left over from his paramedic days, but they were old, 12 years old. He didn't know if they'd still work. He crushed the pills and mixed them with water, then carefully spooned the mixture into her mouth. She coughed and sputtered, but most of it went down. He applied cool cloths to her forehead and neck, trying to bring the fever down without making her too cold. "Come on, sweetheart," he pleaded. "Fight, please fight." The fever raged through the day and into the night. Jack stayed beside her, changing the cloths, monitoring her temperature, willing her to survive. At one point, she started convulsing, her small body seizing violently. Jack held her carefully, making sure she didn't hurt herself, talking to her in a low, steady voice until it passed. "That's it. You're okay. I've got you. You're safe." By midnight, the fever broke. Her temperature started dropping back toward normal, and the shaking stopped. She fell into a deeper sleep, her breathing more regular. Jack slumped in his chair, exhausted beyond measure, but grateful. So grateful. The storm finally stopped on the third morning. Jack opened the door to find 3 feet of snow and a world transformed into white silence. The sky was clear, brilliant blue, and the sun reflecting off the snow was almost blinding, but he barely noticed. Inside, the little girl was still alive. Against all odds, despite everything the world had thrown at her, she was still breathing, still fighting. Jack returned to her side and checked her vitals one more time. Pulse stronger, temperature 97 degrees, skin pink and warm. She was stabilizing, actually stabilizing. He sat back and rubbed his hands over his face, feeling the burn of tears he hadn't let himself shed until now. 3 days ago, those men had said she wouldn't survive. 3 days ago, he'd found her more dead than alive under that porch. But she'd made it. They'd made it. Through the storm, through the hypothermia, through the fever, together. Jack looked at her small face, peaceful now in sleep, and felt something shift inside him. Something that had been frozen for 12 years, buried under grief and guilt and isolation. It felt like hope, fragile and terrifying but real. "I don't even know your name," he said softly, "but you're the bravest person I've ever met." Outside, the mountain was silent and still, blanketed in fresh snow. Inside, a dying child had become a survivor, and a broken man had found a reason to keep fighting. But this was only the beginning. The hardest part was still ahead. The days that followed blurred together like watercolors in the rain. Jack moved through routines he'd learned 2 decades ago, back when he wore a paramedic's uniform and drove an ambulance through the streets of Denver. Back when saving lives was his job, not his desperate attempt at redemption. The little girl slept most of the time, her body focused entirely on the work of healing. Jack monitored her constantly, checking her pulse every hour, her temperature every 2 hours, her breathing with every glance. He'd set up a makeshift medical station on the floor near the fireplace, arranging his supplies with the same precision he'd once used in the back of an ambulance. On the 4th day, she opened her eyes for longer than a few seconds. They were unfocused at first, wandering around the cabin's rough-hewn walls, the exposed beams, the stone fireplace that crackled and popped. Then they landed on Jack. Fear flooded those brown eyes immediately. She tried to pull away, but her body was too weak. A small whimper escaped her cracked lips. "Hey, hey," Jack said gently, staying perfectly still. "It's okay. You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." She stared at him, trembling. Her breathing quickened, shallow and panicked. "My name's Jack," he continued, keeping his voice low and calm. "I found you in the storm. You were very cold, very sick, but you're getting better now. Can you tell me your name?" She didn't answer, just watched him with those terrified eyes, like a wild animal cornered by a predator. Jack nodded slowly. "That's okay. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Are you thirsty? I have water and broth. Would you like some?" A tiny nod, so small he almost missed it. He reached for the cup of warm broth he'd prepared, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "I'm going to help you sit up a little. Is that okay?" Another small nod. Jack slid his arm behind her shoulders, supporting her weight as he lifted her just enough to drink. She was so light it scared him. He held the cup to her lips, and she drank greedily, desperately, like she hadn't had water in days, which he realized she probably hadn't. "Slow," he said gently. "Small sips. Too much too fast will make you sick." She obeyed, and something about that obedience made his chest ache. This was a child used to following orders, used to being afraid. When she'd finished half the cup, he laid her back down. "Good. That's really good. You need to rest now, okay? Sleep helps you heal." Her eyes were already closing, exhaustion pulling her back under. Within seconds, she was asleep again. Jack sat back and exhaled slowly. She'd been awake. She'd responded. She'd drunk on her own. These were victories, small but significant. But the fear in her eyes haunted him. What had happened to this child before she'd ended up under that porch? That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat in the wooden chair by the window, staring out at the moonlit snow, and let himself remember. Let himself go back to the place he'd been running from for 12 years. Denver, March, 1998. He'd been 35 years old, married to Sarah, a nurse he'd met during a training. They'd had Emma 7 years earlier, and she was their whole world, bright and curious and full of life. He'd been working a double shift that day. Sarah had called around 3 in the afternoon. "Can you pick up Emma from dance class? I got called in for an extra shift." "Yeah, of course," he'd said, checking his watch. "I'll be there at 5. But there'd been a massive pile-up on I-25. Multiple vehicles, critical patients. He'd called Sarah back. "I'm stuck. I can't get there in time." "It's fine," she'd said. "I'll leave early. I'll get her." The roads were icy. Black ice, the kind you couldn't see until it was too late. Sarah had been going 40 miles per hour when their Honda hit the patch. The car had spun, crossed the median, and met a semi-truck head-on. Emma died instantly. Sarah held on for 3 days before the machines were turned off. Jack had been there for both. Had held his daughter's broken body. Had sat beside his wife as she took her last breath. And the weight of it, the crushing, suffocating weight of knowing that if he'd just left work, if he'd just been there to pick up Emma himself, they'd still be alive. He'd quit his job 2 weeks later, sold the house, drove west until he ran out of road, then climbed until he ran out of mountain. And he'd stayed here alone for 12 years, punishing himself, hiding from a world where he'd failed the 2 people he loved most. Jack wiped his eyes and looked back at the little girl sleeping by the fire. He didn't even know her name, didn't know her story, but he knew what it felt like to be abandoned, to be left behind. And he'd be damned if he'd let that happen to her again. By the 5th day, her fingers and toes had started to regain feeling. She'd cried out in pain when the blood flow returned, a good sign despite the discomfort. Jack had wrapped them carefully, applied salve his grandfather had taught him to make from pine resin and herbs. His grandfather had lived on this mountain 60 years ago, had known every plant, every remedy. Jack had learned some of it as a boy during summer visits. Now that old knowledge was all he had. He'd run out of antibiotics. The fever had stayed down, but he watched her constantly for any sign of infection. The bruises on her body were fading from purple to yellow-green. He'd counted them one night while she slept. 14 visible bruises, some old, some new, and scars. 3 small circular scars on her upper arm that looked disturbingly like cigarette burns. Rage had filled him then, hot and violent. Someone had done this to her. Someone had hurt this innocent child over and over. And then they'd left her to die in a storm. He'd stepped outside that night and screamed into the darkness until his throat was raw. Screamed at whoever had done this. Screamed at a world that let children suffer. Screamed at God, if there was one, for creating a universe where such cruelty existed. Then he'd come back inside, wiped his face and sat beside her again. His rage didn't matter. His pain didn't matter. What mattered was keeping her alive. On the 6th day, she spoke. Just one word, whispered so quietly he almost missed it. "Thirsty." Jack scrambled for the water, his hands shaking slightly. "Here, I've got you." She drank, and when she finished, she looked at him with those solemn brown eyes. "Thank you." His throat closed up. "You're welcome, sweetheart." "Where's Mama?" Jack's heart sank. He'd been dreading this question. "I don't know. Can you tell me what happened? How you ended up in that cabin?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, in a small voice, "Mama said she had to go away for a while. Said someone would come get me. Said to wait." "How long did you wait?" "I don't know. A long time. It got cold. I was hungry." Her eyes filled with tears. "Did I do something bad? Is that why she didn't come back?" "No," Jack said firmly, moving closer. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything bad. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." "Then why did she leave me?" He didn't have an answer for that. Couldn't explain how a mother could abandon her child. Couldn't make sense of something so senseless. "Sometimes grown-ups make really bad choices," he said finally. "And kids pay for it. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You hear me? This is not your fault." She nodded, but he could see she didn't believe him. In her mind, she'd been left behind because she wasn't good enough, wasn't worth keeping. And that belief had probably been reinforced every time someone hurt her. "What's your name?" Jack asked gently. "Maya," she whispered. "Maya," he repeated. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Jack, and I want you to know something, Maya. You're safe here. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to hurt you. And I'm going to take care of you until we figure out what happens next, okay?" She studied his face for a long moment, searching for the lie. But apparently she didn't find one, because she nodded again. "Okay." That night, while Maya slept, another storm rolled in. Not as violent as the first, but steady and relentless. Snow piled higher around the cabin. Jack checked his supplies. Food was getting low. He had maybe 10 days left, 2 weeks if he stretched it. Fuel for the generator would last another week. After that, they'd be relying solely on the fireplace for heat and cooking. The radio still wasn't working. He'd tried to fix it, but something in the wiring was fried. No way to call for help. No way to let anyone know there was a child up here who needed medical attention. They were completely isolated. Jack stood at the window, watching the snow fall, and felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a physical thing. This child's life was in his hands. Just his. If he made a mistake, if he missed something, if her condition worsened and he couldn't handle it, she would die. The same way Emma had died. The same way Sarah had died. "I can't fail again," he whispered to the glass. "Please, I can't lose another one." On the 7th day, Maya sat up on her own. It took her 3 tries and she was shaking with the effort, but she did it. Jack helped her to the bathroom, supporting most of her weight. She was embarrassed, and he tried to give her as much privacy as possible while still making sure she didn't fall. When they came back, he'd heated more broth and this time added small pieces of soft bread. She ate slowly, carefully, like she was afraid it would be taken away. "You can have as much as you want," Jack said. "There's plenty." She ate 2 full bowls before she stopped. Color had returned to her cheeks. Her eyes were brighter. She was healing, actually healing. "Jack," she said after he'd cleaned up. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Why did you help me? Nobody else did." The question hit him like a punch. "What do you mean?" "Before, when Mama would leave me. I'd try to tell people, teachers, the store lady. But nobody did anything. They said Mama was doing her best, that I should be grateful. She looked down at her hands. So why did you help when nobody else did? Jack knelt beside her so they were eye level. Because helping you was the right thing to do, the only thing to do, and I'm sorry those other people didn't see that. They should have. You deserved better. Mama said I was too much trouble, said that's why she had to leave me places. Your mama was wrong, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. You're not too much trouble. You're a kid. Kids are supposed to be taken care of. That's what adults are supposed to do. And any adult who doesn't do that is failing at the most important job there is. Maya blinked at him, processing this, then quietly, You're nice. Jack's eyes burned. You're pretty great yourself, kid. She smiled, just a small one, barely there. But it was the first smile he'd seen from her, and it felt like watching the sun rise after a long, dark night. The 8th day started normally. Maya was sitting up more, eating better. Jack had even gotten her to laugh once when he'd told her about the squirrel that kept trying to steal from his woodpile. She'd asked him questions about the mountain, about the animals, about whether it was always this cold. He'd answered everything patiently, grateful to hear her voice, to see her engaging with the world again. But around noon, she started coughing. At first it was just occasional, but within an hour it had become constant deep, rattling coughs that shook her whole body. Jack's stomach dropped. He checked her temperature, 102 degrees, the fever was back. And this time, it climbed faster. By evening, she was at 104. She'd stopped responding to his voice. Her breathing had become labored, each breath a struggle. Jack could hear the fluid in her lungs, that wet, crackling sound that meant pneumonia, serious pneumonia. He had nothing left, no antibiotics, no way to call for help. The storm outside had intensified, making any trip down the mountain impossible, even if he'd been willing to leave her alone. What happens next will turn this night upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Jack worked through the night, doing everything he could think of. He kept her hydrated, forced water and diluted broth down her throat even when she couldn't swallow well. He used steam from boiling water to help clear her lungs, creating a tent with blankets and letting her breathe the moist air. He applied cold compresses to bring down the fever, then warm ones when she started shivering violently. Nothing worked. The fever kept climbing. 105, 105.5. Around 2 in the morning, she started seizing again. Jack held her, keeping her safe, but inside he was breaking apart. He'd seen this before, knew what it meant. Her body was shutting down. She was dying. No, he said through clenched teeth. No, you don't get to do this. You fought too hard. Come on, Maya, stay with me. But she didn't respond. Her eyes had rolled back, and her body jerked rhythmically in his arms. Jack looked around the cabin desperately, searching for something, anything he could use. His eyes landed on the shelf where he kept his grandfather's old journals, recipes and remedies from a time before modern medicine. Things he'd dismissed as folk medicine, probably useless. But useless was better than nothing. He gently laid Maya down and ran to the shelf. He flipped through the pages frantically until he found what he was looking for, a remedy for lung fever. His grandfather had written it in his careful script. Willow bark for fever, pine needle tea for breathing, yarrow for infection, boil together, give every 2 hours. Jack had all of those things. He'd harvested them last fall, dried them, stored them without really knowing why. Maybe for this exact moment. He worked fast, boiling water, adding the herbs in the proportions his grandfather had listed. The mixture smelled sharp and earthy, like the forest after rain. When it had steeped long enough, he strained it and let it cool just slightly. Maya, sweetheart, I need you to drink this. He lifted her head, supporting her limp body. Please, just a little. He got some into her mouth. Most of it dribbled out, but some went down. He waited 15 minutes and tried again, and again. By 4 in the morning, He'd gotten maybe 3 ounces into her. It didn't seem like enough. Didn't seem like it would make any difference. Her temperature was 106 now. Her skin burned under his hand. The seizing had stopped, but that might just mean she was too weak to seize anymore. Jack sat beside her, holding her small hand in his, and felt the tears he'd been holding back finally fall. "I'm sorry, Emma," he whispered. "I couldn't save you. And I can't save her either. I tried. I swear I tried, but it's not enough. I'm not enough." He laid his head on the edge of the blanket beside Maya and closed his eyes. He was so tired. Hadn't slept more than an hour at a time in 8 days. His body ached. His mind felt foggy. But he couldn't rest. Not while she was still fighting. Jack lifted his head and looked at her pale face, at the dark circles under her eyes, at the way her chest struggled with each breath. "Listen to me, Maya," he said, his voice breaking. "I know you're tired. I know it hurts. And I know it would be easier to just let go. But you can't. You hear me? You can't give up. You're stronger than this. Stronger than anything that's ever hurt you." He squeezed her hand. "You survived being abandoned. You survived that storm. You survived starvation and hypothermia and everything else the world threw at you. So you can survive this too. You have to. Because there are people who need you. Because your story isn't over yet. Because I need you to show me that it's possible to keep fighting even when everything seems hopeless." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, sweetheart. Please don't leave me. I've lost everyone I ever loved. I can't lose you too." He didn't know if she could hear him. Didn't know if his words meant anything to her unconscious mind. But he kept talking anyway, telling her about the spring that would come, about the wildflowers that would bloom, about the deer and the rabbits and the eagles that soared over the peaks. As dawn broke, grey light filtering through the windows, Jack checked her temperature again. 105.8. It had dropped. Just a little, but it had dropped. Her breathing seemed slightly easier too, still laboured but not quite as desperate. Jack stared at the thermometer, afraid to hope. Afraid that if he believed she might make it, fate would snatch her away just to punish him for daring to hope. But over the next hour, her temperature continued to fall. 105.5, 105, 104.7. The remedy was working. Somehow, impossibly, his grandfather's old mountain medicine was working. By mid-morning, Maya opened her eyes. They were unfocused and confused, but they were open. And when Jack said her name, she looked at him. "Jack?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I don't feel good." He laughed, the sound somewhere between a sob and relief. "I know, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine." She closed her eyes again, but this time it was just sleep. Real sleep, not the unconscious shutdown of a body giving up. Jack slumped back against the wall and covered his face with his hands. His whole body was shaking. She'd been so close, so terribly close to slipping away. And somehow, against all odds, she'd pulled through. They'd pulled through, together. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Jack gave Maya more of the herbal remedy every 2 hours, and each time she drank a little more. Her fever continued to drop. By evening, it was down to 101, still elevated but manageable. He made her real food for the first time, soft scrambled eggs and mashed potatoes. She ate a few bites and kept them down. Another victory. That night, Jack finally allowed himself to sleep. Real sleep. More than an hour. He set an alarm to wake him every 3 hours to check on Maya, but for the first time in over a week, he actually rested. When he woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the window. The storm had passed. The sky outside was brilliant blue, and the world sparkled with fresh snow. And Maya was sitting up, looking around the cabin with curious eyes. "Good morning," Jack said, his voice rough from sleep. She turned to him and smiled. A real smile this time, not just a small one. "Good morning." "How are you feeling?" "Hungry." Jack laughed and stood up. "Hungry is good. Hungry means you're healing. Let's get you some breakfast." As he cooked oatmeal and heated milk, he watched her from the corner of his eye. She was weak still, would need weeks to fully recover, but she was alive, alert, talking. She'd survived. Against every odd, every expert opinion, every voice that had said it was impossible, this little girl had survived. And somewhere in the process of saving her, Jack realized, she'd started saving him too. He brought her the bowl of oatmeal, sweetened with honey, and sat beside her. "Maya, there's something I need to tell you." She looked up at him, spoon halfway to her mouth. "When I found you, people in town said you wouldn't make it, said it was too late, that there was no point in trying. But they were wrong. You proved them all wrong. You're the strongest, bravest person I've ever met." She blinked at him. "Really?" "Really. And I want you to remember that, okay? No matter what happens next, no matter what anyone says about you, remember that you survived the impossible. You're a fighter, Maya. Don't ever forget that." She nodded slowly, processing his words. Then quietly, "Will you remember too, that you saved me when nobody else would?" Jack's throat tightened. "Yes, sweetheart, I'll remember." They ate breakfast together as the sun climbed higher, filling the cabin with warm light. Outside, the mountain was quiet and peaceful. Inside, two broken souls had found each other in the darkness and somehow made it through to the other side. The worst was over. But the real challenges were just beginning. The days that followed Maya's fever breaking fell into a rhythm Jack hadn't experienced in 12 years. A rhythm built around another person's needs, another person's life. He woke at dawn not because the silence drove him out of bed, but because Maya needed her medicine. He cooked not just to survive, but because a little girl needed nutrition to heal. He talked not to the empty walls, but to someone who actually listened. Maya's recovery was slow but steady. On the 10th day after he'd found her, she managed to walk from the bed to the fireplace with his support. Her legs shook with the effort, and she had to rest for 20 minutes afterward, but she'd done it. By the 12th day, she could make the trip on her own, though she still moved carefully, like someone relearning how their body worked. Her personality began to emerge in small, careful increments. She was quiet, observant. She'd sit for hours watching Jack work on repairing tools or splitting firewood, her brown eyes tracking his every movement. Sometimes he'd catch her staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, not fear anymore, but something like wonder, like she couldn't quite believe he was real. "What are you thinking about?" he asked one afternoon as he sharpened his hunting knife. She was quiet for a moment, then softly, "You're different from other grown-ups." "How so?" "You don't yell. You don't get mad when I ask questions, and you don't leave." Jack's hand stilled on the whetstone. "Is that what other grown-ups did? Yelled and left?" Maya nodded, pulling her knees up to her chest. "Mama's boyfriends, mostly. They didn't like me, said I was in the way. Mama would tell me to be quiet, to stay in my room, but I'd get hungry or need to use the bathroom, and they'd get mad." "And your mama? Where was she?" "She was there, but she was different when they were around, like she forgot about me." Maya traced patterns on the blanket with her finger. "Sometimes she'd forget even when they weren't there. She'd sleep a lot. And when she was awake, she wasn't really there. Her eyes were weird." Jack knew what that meant. Drugs. He'd seen enough addicts during his paramedic years to recognize the signs even in a child's description. "How long would she leave you alone?" he asked gently. Maya shrugged. "I don't know. A long time sometimes. I learned to get food from the cabinets when I was little. Cereal mostly. Crackers. Once I ate a whole jar of peanut butter because there wasn't anything else." "What about school?" "I went sometimes, when Mama remembered, but we moved a lot. And sometimes the teachers would ask questions about bruises and stuff, so Mama would take me out and we'd go somewhere else." Jack's jaw clenched. Every word out of Maya's mouth revealed a childhood of systematic neglect and abuse, and the system that was supposed to protect children had failed her at every turn. "That last time," he said carefully, "when she left you in the cabin, did she say why?" Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "She said she had to go meet someone, said it was important, said she'd be back in a few hours and I should wait inside and not make noise, but she didn't come back. I waited and waited. I ate all the crackers she left. Then there was nothing. I got so cold. The door was locked from outside, so I couldn't leave. I found the little space under the porch and crawled in to get away from the wind. How long were you there? I don't know. The sun came up 3 times, I think, maybe 4. I stopped counting. 3 or 4 days. This child had been abandoned in an unheated cabin in the middle of winter for 3 or 4 days before Jack found her. It was a miracle she'd survived at all. Maya, Jack said, setting down the knife and moving to sit beside her. What your mama did leaving you like that, it was wrong, really wrong. And I need you to understand something. None of what happened to you was your fault. You didn't deserve any of it. Not the yelling, not the hitting, not being left alone. You deserve to be safe and loved and taken care of. Every kid deserves that. But I wasn't good enough, she whispered. If I was good enough, she would have stayed. No, Jack said firmly. That's not how it works. Your mama was sick, the kind of sick that makes people hurt the ones they're supposed to love. That's on her, not you. You were always good enough. You were always worth staying for. Maya looked at him with those old tired eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. Do you really believe that? With everything I have, Jack said. And someday, I hope you'll believe it too. She didn't respond, just leaned against his shoulder. Jack put his arm around her carefully, and they sat together in silence while the fire crackled and the mountain wind whispered against the windows. As the days passed, Maya began to show interest in things beyond just surviving. She noticed Jack's wood carvings on the shelf, small animals he'd whittled during the long winter nights when sleep wouldn't come. Did you make these? She asked, holding a wooden rabbit. Yeah, it's something my grandfather taught me when I was about your age. Can you teach me? Jack hesitated. Carving knives were sharp, dangerous for a child still regaining her coordination, but the hope in her eyes made him reconsider. Tell you what, he said. You can watch me make one, and when your hands are stronger, I'll teach you. Deal? Deal. So Jack carved while Maya watched, his hands moving through the familiar motions. He shaped a deer this time, explaining each step as he worked. Maya asked questions constantly, her curiosity emerging now that she felt safe enough to express it. Why does the wood have different colors? That's the grain. Each tree is different, like fingerprints. Do trees have feelings? I don't know, but I treat them with respect just in case. Is that why you say thank you when you cut one down? Jack paused. He hadn't realized she'd been paying that much attention. Yeah, my grandfather taught me that too. Take what you need, but always be grateful. I like your grandfather. Was he nice like you? He was. He lived on this mountain for most of his life, knew every trail, every plant. When I was little, I'd spend summers up here with him. He taught me to fish and hunt and survive in the wilderness. Where is he now? He passed away when I was 17, but I still hear his voice sometimes, telling me things I need to know. Maya nodded solemnly. I hear my grandma sometimes. She died when I was 4. She was nice too. She used to make me pancakes shaped like animals. That sounds wonderful. It was. Maya was quiet for a moment. Do you think she's mad at me for what happened? No, sweetheart. I think she'd be proud of how strong you've been. Maya smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. It was getting easier to make her smile now. She was beginning to trust that this safety was real, that it wouldn't be snatched away without warning. 2 weeks after finding Maya, Jack's radio finally crackled to life. He'd been trying to fix it every day, and apparently he'd finally gotten the wiring right. The voice that came through was staticky, but recognizable. Sheriff Tom Harding from Coldwater. Anyone on this frequency? This is Sheriff Harding conducting wellness checks after the storm. If anyone can hear this, please respond. Jack grabbed the handset. Sheriff, this is Jack Brennan up on Stillwater Ridge. A pause, then, Jack? Didn't expect to hear from you. You okay up there? I'm fine, but I have a situation. I need you to send Dr. Sarah Whitmore up here as soon as the roads are clear. Doc Whitmore, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Jack glanced at Maya, who was watching him with wide eyes. I found a child, little girl, 6 years old. She was abandoned in one of the old cabins on Ridgeline Road during the storm. She's recovering, but she needs proper medical attention. The radio went silent for so long, Jack thought he'd lost the connection. Then, "Say that again. You found a child?" "Her name's Maya. She was left in an abandoned cabin. I brought her to my place when the storm hit. She had severe hypothermia, frostbite, and pneumonia. She's stable now, but a doctor needs to examine her." "Jesus Christ." Sheriff Harding's voice was tight. "How long has she been with you?" 2 weeks. 2 weeks. "And she's alive?" "Yes." "Jack, everyone in town heard about a missing kid, Rebecca Walsh's daughter. Social services assumed the mother took her when she left town, but nobody could track them down. We had no idea the child was left behind. If we'd known—" "She would have died waiting," Jack cut in. "The roads were impassable. Nobody could have reached her in time." "Still, this is going to be complicated. Rebecca Walsh is wanted for child endangerment and neglect. When people find out you've had her kid this whole time—" "I saved her life," Jack said flatly. "That's all that matters." "I know, but there are protocols, social services, legal stuff. This isn't going to be simple." "I don't care about simple. I care about Maya. Get Dr. Whitmore up here. Then we'll deal with the rest." "All right. Roads are mostly clear now. I'll have her up there tomorrow morning. But Jack, be prepared. Once this gets out, it's going to be a circus." The radio went silent. Jack set down the handset and found Maya standing right behind him, her face pale. "Are they going to take me away?" she whispered. Jack knelt in front of her. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I promise you, I'm going to fight for you, whatever it takes. I don't want to go with strangers. I want to stay here, with you." His heart clenched. "I want that too, sweetheart. But there are rules about these things. Adults I don't know are going to come up here and ask questions. They're going to want to make sure you're safe and being taken care of properly. But I am safe. You take care of me." "I know. And I'm going to tell them that. But Maya, you need to understand something. Your mama, she's in trouble with the law. And because of that, people are going to have to decide what's best for you." "You're what's best for me," Maya said, her voice rising. "You're the only one who helped, the only one who didn't leave." Jack pulled her into a hug. "I know, and I'm going to make sure they know that too." That night, neither of them slept well. Maya woke up twice from nightmares, calling for Jack in panic. Each time he was there immediately, holding her, reassuring her that she was safe. But he could see the fear had returned to her eyes. The fragile trust they'd built was being threatened by the outside world creeping back in. Dr. Sarah Whitmore arrived at 9 the next morning. She was in her mid-50s, grey-haired and practical, with the no-nonsense demeanour of someone who'd seen everything. She'd been the town doctor for 23 years, had delivered half the babies in cold water, and buried most of their grandparents. She was also the only person from town Jack had maintained any contact with over the years. She'd treated him once for a broken finger and hadn't asked questions about why he lived alone on a mountain. He respected that. "Jack," she said, stepping into the cabin and shaking snow off her boots. "Sheriff told me what happened. Where's the girl?" Maya was hiding behind Jack, peeking around his leg at the stranger. "This is Maya," Jack said gently. "Maya, this is Dr. Whitmore. She's going to make sure you're healing properly. She's not going to hurt you." Sarah set down her medical bag and smiled warmly. "Hello, Maya. You can call me Sarah if you want. I heard you've been through quite an adventure." Maya didn't respond, just pressed closer to Jack. Sarah didn't push. "How about we start easy? Can I just look at your hands? Jack tells me you had some frostbite." Slowly, Maya extended her hands. Sarah examined them carefully, her expression growing more impressed as she worked. "These are healing remarkably well. What did you use?" "Pine resin salve," Jack said. "My grandfather's recipe. Well, it worked. No signs of permanent damage. Can I check your feet?" Maya nodded and sat down. Sarah removed her socks and examined her toes with the same careful attention. "Incredible. You should have lost at least 2 toes with this kind of exposure. But they're all intact." She looked up at Jack. "What else did you treat?" Hypothermia. Core temperature was around 86 when I found her. Pneumonia set in on day 8. Fever spiked to 106. Sarah's eyebrows rose. 106? And you brought it down how? Willow bark, pine needle tea, yarrow, old mountain remedy. And it worked? She's alive, isn't she? Sarah sat back, shaking her head in amazement. Jack, you performed a medical miracle. This child should be dead 5 times over. The hypothermia alone should have caused permanent brain damage. The pneumonia should have killed her without antibiotics. But she's here, alert, responsive, and healing. It's extraordinary. She's extraordinary, Jack corrected. I just gave her a fighting chance. Sarah spent the next hour conducting a thorough examination. She checked Maya's heart, lungs, reflexes, cognitive function. She documented every bruise, every scar. And when she was done, she pulled Jack aside. She's malnourished, has been for a long time. The bruising pattern suggests repeated physical abuse. Those circular scars on her arm are definitely cigarette burns. And emotionally? Sarah shook her head. That child has been through hell. The attachment she's formed to you is strong, probably the first stable attachment she's ever had. So what happens now? Now, I file my report. Social services gets involved. They'll want to place her in foster care while they investigate what happened to her mother. She can't go to strangers, Jack said urgently. Sarah, you saw how scared she was when you first got here. If they put her in the system, with people she doesn't know, it'll destroy her. I know, but I don't make those decisions. The county does. What if I wanted to keep her? What would I need to do? Sarah looked at him carefully. Are you serious? Yes. Jack, you're a single man living alone on a mountain. You have no job, no visible means of income. You're a recluse who hasn't been part of society for 12 years. On paper, you're the last person they'd approve as a guardian. But she trusts me. She's safe with me. Doesn't that count for something? It does. But you'd need to go through official channels. Background check, home study, court hearings. It could take months. And in the meantime, Maya would be in foster care. Jack's hands clenched into fists. There has to be another way. Maybe. If the investigation into Rebecca Walsh turns up enough evidence of abuse and abandonment, and if Maya expresses a clear preference to stay with you, a judge might grant temporary guardianship while you work toward permanent custody. But that's a big if, Jack, and it requires you to let the system do its job. The system failed her, Jack said bitterly. Teachers saw the bruises. People knew something was wrong and nobody did anything. I know, and that's going to work in your favor when this goes to court. You did what everyone else should have done. You saved her. But now you have to trust that there are good people in the system who will fight for her best interest. What if they don't see it that way? What if they think a mountain hermit is dangerous? Then you show them otherwise. Let them come up here. Let them see what you've built for her. Let them see the bond between you. And most importantly, let them hear from Maya herself. That afternoon, the social worker arrived. Her name was Jennifer Rhodes, mid-30s, with kind eyes and a weary expression that suggested she'd seen too many heartbreaking cases. She came with Sheriff Harding and a notebook full of questions. Maya hid in the loft when they arrived, refusing to come down. It's okay, Jack called up to her. You don't have to talk to anyone you don't want to. I'm right here. Jennifer and the sheriff spent 2 hours at the cabin. They interviewed Jack, examined the living conditions, took photographs. Jack showed them the cellar where he kept food stores, the water filtration system, the medical supplies. He explained his background as a paramedic, his training, his grandfather's teachings. How do you support yourself? Jennifer asked. I have savings, and I do occasional carpentry work for people in town, trade work for supplies. I'm not wealthy, but I'm not destitute either. And you live up here completely alone? I did, until Maya. Why? Why isolate yourself like this? Jack hesitated. He'd never told anyone the full story. But if it would help Maya, he'd lay himself bare. 12 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in a car accident. I was supposed to pick up my daughter from dance class, but I got called to an accident scene. My wife went instead. Black ice on the highway, They both died. His voice cracked. I couldn't save them. I was a paramedic, and I couldn't save my own family. So I came up here to get away from the world that took them. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone. But then I found Maya, and for the first time in 12 years, I had a reason to care about tomorrow. Jennifer wrote something in her notebook. And if we place Maya in foster care, what will you do? Fight to get her back. Whatever it takes. She's been abandoned enough. I won't abandon her, too. Mr. Brennan, I appreciate what you've done for this child, truly. But my job is to ensure her safety and well-being. And while I can see you care about her, I need to determine if this environment is appropriate for a 6-year-old girl. Then ask her, Jack said. Ask Maya where she feels safe. Jennifer looked up at the loft. Maya, will you come down and talk to me? I promise I just want to hear how you're doing. No response. Maya, sweetheart, Jack said gently. It's okay. You can tell her the truth, whatever you want to say. Slowly, Maya appeared at the top of the ladder. She climbed down carefully and stood next to Jack, holding his hand. Jennifer smiled. Hi Maya, I'm Jennifer. I work for an organization that helps kids who've had a tough time. Can you tell me how you're feeling? Maya was silent for a long moment, then quietly. Safe. That's good. And Jack, he's taking good care of you? Maya nodded. Can you tell me what happened before Jack found you? Where's your mama? Maya's hand tightened on Jack's. She left me, in the cabin. Said she'd come back, but she didn't. I got cold. I was hungry. Then Jack found me. And Jack brought you here? He saved me. Everyone said I wouldn't survive, but he didn't give up. He kept me warm. He made me better when I was sick. He reads to me and teaches me things, and he doesn't yell or hit or leave me alone. Her voice rose, urgent now. He's good. He's the best grown-up I ever met. And I don't want to leave. Please don't make me leave. Tears were streaming down her face now. Jack knelt beside her. Hey, it's okay. It's not okay, Maya cried. They're going to take me away. They're going to put me with strangers, and I'll never see you again, and I'll be all alone, and… Maya, listen to me. Jack took her face in his hands gently. I will never let you be alone. No matter what happens, no matter where you go, I will fight to be in your life. I promise you that. But what if they won't let you? Then I'll fight harder. I didn't survive 12 years on this mountain alone to give up now. You're stuck with me, kid, whether you like it or not. Maya threw her arms around his neck and sobbed. Jack held her, looking over her head at Jennifer, whose own eyes were suspiciously bright. I need time to process all this, Jennifer said quietly. Talk to my supervisor. Review the case files on Rebecca Walsh. But Mr. Brennan, I want you to know something. In 15 years of doing this job, I've seen a lot of situations. And what I see here is a child who's found safety and stability, maybe for the first time in her life. That matters. It matters a lot. So you're not taking her today? No, but I will be back, with paperwork, with more questions, and eventually with a court date. This isn't over, but for now she can stay with you, temporarily. After they left, Jack and Maya sat together on the porch steps, watching the sun set behind the mountains. The sky blazed orange and pink, painting the snow in warm colors. Jack? Maya said softly. Yeah? What if the judge says I can't stay? What if they make me go somewhere else? Then I'll appeal the decision. I'll hire a lawyer. I'll do whatever it takes. But what if it's not enough? Jack was quiet for a moment. Then we'll deal with it together. But Maya, I need you to understand something. No matter what a judge says, no matter where you physically are, you'll always have a place right here. He touched his chest over his heart. Nobody can take that away. You're part of me now, part of my life, and that doesn't change based on paperwork or court orders. Promise? I promise. She leaned against him, and they watched the stars begin to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Over the next few weeks, the cabin transformed. Jack built a proper bed for Maya, using wood from his stores and soft furs he'd collected over the years. He cleared space for her things, meager as they were. He taught her to cook simple meals, to tend the fire safely, to recognize medicinal plants. Spring was approaching. The snow began to melt in patches, revealing brown earth and the first green shoots of returning life. Birds returned to the mountain, filling the mornings with song. And Maya, who'd arrived at death's door, bloomed like the wildflowers just beginning to push through the soil. She drew constantly now. Jack had given her paper and pencils from his supplies, and she filled page after page with pictures. Mountains and trees and animals. The cabin. And over, a tall man with a beard standing next to a little girl, both of them smiling. "That's us," she'd say proudly. "That's our family." Our family. The words hit Jack differently each time she said them. He'd had a family once, had lost them, had convinced himself he'd never have one again. But here was this fierce little girl declaring with absolute certainty that they belonged to each other. One afternoon, while Jack was teaching Maya to identify edible plants, she asked, "Will you tell me about Emma?" He froze. He'd mentioned his daughter once, weeks ago during Maya's fever. He hadn't expected her to remember. "What do you want to know?" What was she like? Jack sat down on a fallen log, and Maya climbed up next to him. He stared out at the valley below, seeing the past instead of the present. She was bright. So bright, always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. She loved animals like you, and she had this laugh, this infectious giggle that made everyone around her laugh too. "Do I remind you of her?" "No," Jack said honestly. "You're different. She was carefree in a way you've never had the chance to be, but you're brave in ways she never needed to be. You're both special, just in different ways. Do you miss her?" "Every day. But it's different now. Before, missing her felt like drowning, like I couldn't breathe around the pain. But now," he looked at Maya, "now it feels more like remembering someone you loved and being grateful you got to know them at all." "Did I help with that? With the not drowning part?" "Yes, sweetheart. You helped a lot." Maya nodded solemnly. "Good. Because you helped me not drown too, in the cold. And in all the bad stuff that happened before, so we're even." Jack smiled. "Yeah, kid, we're even." But their peace was fragile. Word had spread through Coldwater and the surrounding towns. The hermit who'd saved an abandoned child. Opinions were divided sharply. Some people saw Jack as a hero. Others saw him as suspicious, a mountain man with a child who wasn't his, living in isolation. What was he really doing up there? The whispers reached Jack through Sarah, who'd become a regular visitor. "There's talk," she warned. "Some people are concerned. They're asking why you want to keep her, questioning your motives." "My motives are simple," Jack said. "She's a child who needs someone, and I'm someone who can provide that." "I know, but not everyone sees it that way. There's going to be a hearing in 3 weeks. The judge will decide on temporary custody arrangements. You need to be prepared for opposition." "Who's opposing?" "Rebecca Walsh's mother. She surfaced last week. Claims she had no idea her daughter had abandoned Maya and she wants custody." Jack's blood ran cold. The grandmother? Where was she when Maya was being abused? "Out of state. She says she lost contact with Rebecca years ago. She's arguing that family should stay with family." "Maya's family is here, with me. That's what you'll need to convince the judge." The night before the hearing, Jack couldn't sleep. He stood at the window, watching the moon rise over the mountains, and wondered how he'd ended up here. 3 months ago, he'd been alone, isolated, convinced his life was over in every way that mattered. Now he was fighting for the right to raise a child, fighting to keep the family he'd accidentally found. Maya appeared beside him, her small hand slipping into his. "Can't sleep either?" "No." "Are you scared? About tomorrow?" "Terrified," he admitted. "Me too." She was quiet for a moment. "But we're going to be okay, right? You and me?" Jack looked down at her, at this incredible child who'd survived impossibilities and still had the courage to hope for a better future. "Yeah, sweetheart. One way or another, we're going to be okay." "Promise?" "Promise." They stood together in the darkness, 2 survivors holding on to each other and praying that hope would be enough. The courthouse in Coldwater was a modest building, red brick with white columns, built in 1952 when the town still had dreams of growing into something bigger. It never did. The population had stayed around 800 for the last 40 years, give or take a few births and deaths. Everyone knew everyone, which meant everyone had an opinion about the mountain man who'd brought a half-frozen child down from Ridgeline Road. Jack sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, wearing clothes he hadn't touched in 12 years. A button-down shirt, clean jeans, boots he'd actually polished. Maya sat beside him in a new dress Sarah had bought for her, navy blue with white flowers. She clutched Jack's hand so tightly his fingers were going numb, but he didn't complain. "There are going to be a lot of people in there," Jack said quietly. "Some of them are going to ask you questions. You just tell the truth, okay? Whatever you're feeling, whatever you want to say. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks." Maya nodded, but her face was pale. She'd barely eaten that morning, too nervous to stomach more than a few bites of toast. Jennifer Rhodes, the social worker, appeared from down the hallway. She'd been kind during her visits to the cabin, professional but warm. Now her expression was carefully neutral. "They're ready for us," she said. The courtroom was smaller than Jack expected. Wood paneling on the walls, fluorescent lights overhead, maybe 30 seats for observers. Most of them were filled. Jack recognized Sheriff Harding, Dr. Whitmore, a few people from town. And sitting in the front row on the opposite side was a woman in her 60s, grey-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a dark suit. She stared at Maya with an intensity that made Jack's protective instincts flare. Rebecca Walsh's mother, Eleanor Walsh. Judge Margaret Hartfield entered, and everyone stood. She was in her late 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. Jack had heard she was fair but strict, a former prosecutor who didn't tolerate nonsense. "Please be seated," she said, settling into her chair behind the bench. "We're here today regarding the temporary custody of Maya Walsh, age 6. Mr. Brennan, you're seeking to maintain custody of the minor child. Mrs. Walsh, you're seeking custody as the child's biological grandmother, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Eleanor Walsh said, standing. Her voice was crisp, educated. "Yes, Your Honor," Jack said, his voice rougher by comparison. "Very well. Let's begin. Miss Rhodes, you've conducted the initial investigation. Please present your findings." Jennifer stood and opened her file. "Your Honor, on February 10th of this year, I received a call from Sheriff Harding regarding Maya Walsh. She'd been found by Mr. Jack Brennan in an abandoned cabin on Ridgeline Road during the blizzard. At the time of discovery, Maya was suffering from severe hypothermia, malnutrition, and had been abandoned by her mother, Rebecca Walsh, for approximately 4 days without food, heat, or supervision. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Hartfield's expression darkened. "Mr. Brennan brought Maya to his cabin and provided medical care. According to Dr. Whitmore's testimony, Maya presented with core body temperature of 86 degrees, frostbite on extremities, and later developed severe pneumonia with fever reaching 106 degrees. Dr. Whitmore has stated that without Mr. Brennan's intervention, Maya would have died within hours." Eleanor Walsh's face remained impassive, but her fingers tightened on the armrest. "In the 3 months since," Jennifer continued, "I've conducted 5 home visits to Mr. Brennan's residence. Maya has gained 8 pounds, her injuries have healed completely, and she demonstrates a strong, healthy attachment to Mr. Brennan. However, there are concerns. Mr. Brennan lives in isolation on Stillwater Ridge, has limited income from occasional carpentry work, and has had no contact with the community for 12 years prior to this incident." "And the grandmother?" Judge Hartfield asked. "Mrs. Eleanor Walsh is a retired schoolteacher from Seattle. She has no criminal record, owns her home, and receives a pension. She states she lost contact with her daughter Rebecca approximately 8 years ago, but recently learned of Maya's existence and wishes to provide a stable home environment." Judge Hartfield nodded. "I'd like to hear from Mrs. Walsh first. Please approach." Eleanor stood and walked to the witness stand with perfect posture. After being sworn in, she folded her hands and looked directly at the judge. "Mrs. Walsh, when did you last see your daughter Rebecca?" 8 years ago, Your Honor. She left Seattle after high school, got involved with various men, developed substance abuse problems. I tried to help her, paid for 2 rehabilitation programs, but she refused to stay clean. Eventually, she cut off all contact. I had no idea she'd had a child until the social worker contacted me last month. And you're seeking custody of Maya? Yes, Your Honor. She's my granddaughter, my flesh and blood. I have a stable home, financial security, and unlike Mr. Brennan, I have experience raising children. I was a teacher for 35 years. I understand child development, education, socialization. I can provide Maya with structure, proper schooling, and a normal childhood. Have you met Maya? Not yet. She's been kept isolated with Mr. Brennan. That's not true, Jack said, unable to stop himself. She wasn't kept anywhere. Jennifer could see her whenever. Mr. Brennan, Judge Hartfield said sharply, you'll have your turn. Mrs. Walsh, continue. Your Honor, I understand Mr. Brennan saved Maya's life, and I'm grateful. But saving someone doesn't make you their parent. Maya belongs with family, with someone who can give her opportunities, expose her to the world, help her heal from the trauma she's experienced. A 6-year-old girl shouldn't be living on a mountain with a recluse who has no connection to society. I see. Thank you, Mrs. Walsh. You may step down. Mr. Brennan, please approach. Jack's legs felt unsteady as he walked to the witness stand. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, then sat down. Every eye in the room was on him. Mr. Brennan, tell me about the day you found Maya. Jack took a breath. I'd gone down to Coldwater for supplies. While I was at Miller's General Store, I overheard some men talking about a child who'd been left in a cabin on Ridgeline Road. They said nobody could get up there because of the storm and that the kid probably wouldn't survive anyway. And what did you do? I went looking for her. Found her under the collapsed porch, barely breathing, skin blue from the cold. She'd been there for days without food or heat. I carried her back to my cabin and spent the next 2 weeks keeping her alive. Why? You had no obligation to this child. You could have reported it to authorities and continued with your life. Jack looked directly at the judge. Because I'm a former paramedic, I took an oath to help people in need, and because I know what it's like to lose a child, I lost my daughter 12 years ago and my wife with her. I came to the mountain to escape that pain, but when I found Maya dying in the snow, I couldn't walk away. Nobody deserves to die alone and afraid, especially not a 6-year-old girl. You mentioned you're a former paramedic. What ended that career? I quit. After my family died, I couldn't do the work anymore. Every patient I treated, I saw Emma's face. I saved dozens of lives, but I couldn't save hers, so I stopped trying. Until Maya. Until Maya, Jack agreed. She reminded me why I became a paramedic in the first place, to help people who can't help themselves, to be there when everyone else has given up. Judge Hartfield made a note. Mr. Brennan, Mrs. Walsh raises valid concerns. You live in isolation, have limited income, and by your own admission, you've spent 12 years avoiding human contact. Why should I believe you're capable of raising a child? Because I already am, Jack said simply. Maya isn't just surviving with me. She's thriving. She's gained weight, learned to read better, learned survival skills, plant identification, basic first aid. She helps cook, tends the fire, asks 1,000 questions a day. She's curious and brave and stronger than anyone I've ever met. And she feels safe with me. That has to count for something. Safety isn't everything. Children need education, socialization, opportunities. And she'll have those. I'm not keeping her locked on the mountain. I've already enrolled her in the Coldwater School starting this fall. Sarah Whitmore has offered to tutor her to catch up on what she's missed. And as for socialization, Maya's spent her whole life being hurt by people. She needs time to heal, to learn that not everyone will abandon or abuse her. I can give her that time. What about income? I have savings from my years as a paramedic. I do carpentry work. I hunt and fish and grow vegetables. We're not wealthy, but we have everything we need. Judge Hartfield leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, I've read Dr. Whitmore's report. The medical care you provided was extraordinary, but medical care and emotional care are different things. Can you honestly tell me you're equipped to help a traumatized child process years of abuse and neglect? Jack's voice was steady. I can tell you I wake up every morning thinking about how to make her feel safe. I can tell you I read to her every night and check on her when she has nightmares. I can tell you that when she smiles, it feels like the sun coming out after 12 years of winter. I'm not perfect. I'm probably going to make mistakes. But I love that little girl, and I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure she knows she's wanted and valued and worth staying for. The courtroom was silent. Judge Hartfield studied him for a long moment. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. You may step down. I'd like to call Dr. Sarah Whitmore. Sarah took the stand with calm professionalism. She'd been a witness in court before, and it showed. Dr. Whitmore, you examined Maya shortly after Mr. Brennan found her. Describe her condition. She was in critical condition. Core temperature dangerously low, frostbite on fingers and toes, severe malnutrition suggesting months of inadequate nutrition. She also had multiple bruises in various stages of healing, indicating repeated physical abuse. 3 circular scars on her upper arm consistent with cigarette burns. Eleanor Walsh's face paled slightly. What was your prognosis? Honestly, I didn't think she'd survive. The hypothermia alone should have caused permanent brain damage or death. The pneumonia that developed later should have killed her without hospital intervention and IV antibiotics, but Mr. Brennan used traditional mountain remedies, maintained constant care, and somehow brought her through. It's the most remarkable case of wilderness medicine I've encountered in my career. And her current condition? Excellent. She's gained weight, shows no cognitive deficits, and her physical injuries have healed completely. Emotionally, she's formed a secure attachment to Mr. Brennan. She trusts him, feels safe with him, and has begun to process her trauma in a healthy way. In your professional opinion, would removing her from Mr. Brennan's care be detrimental? Yes. Maya has experienced multiple abandonments and betrayals. Removing her from the one stable relationship she's ever known could cause serious psychological harm. She needs consistency right now, not another upheaval. Thank you, Doctor. Mrs. Walsh, do you have questions? Eleanor stood. Doctor, you said Maya is processing her trauma in a healthy way. But surely a professional therapist would be more appropriate than a mountain hermit with no training. Mr. Brennan has been researching childhood trauma extensively. He's read every book I've recommended and implemented therapeutic techniques remarkably well. And Maya needs safety before she needs therapy. She's getting that safety now. But what about her education, her social development? Children are resilient. Maya can catch up academically. What she can't recover from is another loss, another person telling her she's not worth keeping. Mr. Brennan is giving her the one thing she's never had, unconditional love. Eleanor sat down, her expression tight. I'd like to hear from Maya herself, Judge Hartfield said. Jennifer, is she prepared? Yes, Your Honor, but I recommend keeping it brief. She's nervous. Understood. Maya, please come forward. Maya stood on shaking legs. Jack wanted to go with her, but Jennifer had explained that wouldn't be allowed. She had to do this alone. The bailiff brought a booster seat so Maya could be seen over the witness stand. She looked so small sitting there, her hands gripping the armrests. Hi, Maya, Judge Hartfield said gently. I'm Judge Hartfield. You can call me Judge if that's easier. I just want to ask you a few questions. There's no wrong answers, okay? Just tell me what you're thinking and feeling. Maya nodded, eyes wide. Can you tell me about living with Jack? It's good, Maya said quietly. He's nice. What do you do together? We cook and read. He teaches me about plants and animals. He carved me a rabbit. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wooden rabbit Jack had made for her. He made this so I'd have something to hold when I'm scared. And do you get scared often? Sometimes at night. I have bad dreams about the cold, about being alone, but Jack always comes when I call. He sits with me until I fall back asleep. That's very kind of him. Maya, do you know who Mrs. Walsh is? Judge Hartfield gestured to Eleanor. Maya looked at her grandmother for the first time. She's Mama's mama. That's right, she'd like to take care of you. Would you like that? No, Maya said firmly. Why not? I don't know her. She wasn't there when Mama left me. She wasn't there when I was cold and hungry. Jack was. Jack saved me when everyone else said I'd die, and he didn't do it because he had to. He did it because he wanted to, because he thinks I'm worth saving." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. "Maya, if I said you had to go live with Mrs. Walsh, what would you do?" Maya's voice trembled. "I'd run away. I'd run back to the mountain to find Jack, because that's where I belong. That's where home is. And if I said you could stay with Jack, I'd say thank you," Maya whispered. "I'd say thank you, and I'd promise to be really good and not cause trouble, and I'd do whatever you wanted if you just let me stay with the person who loves me." Judge Hartfield's expression softened. "Honey, you don't have to earn love, and you don't have to be good to deserve it. You already deserve it just by being you. Do you understand that?" Maya shook her head. "Not really." "Well, I hope someday you will. Thank you, Maya. You can go sit down now." Jack met her halfway and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder, shaking. "You did so good," he whispered. So good." Judge Hartfield reviewed her notes for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. "This is an unusual case. On one hand, we have Mrs. Walsh, a blood relative with financial stability and conventional credentials. On the other, we have Mr. Brennan, who has no legal relationship to Maya, but has proven himself capable of providing exceptional care under extraordinary circumstances." She paused. "Normally I'd favor blood relatives. Family ties matter, but this case isn't normal. Maya wasn't abandoned for a few hours or even a few days. She was left to die, and the person who saved her wasn't family by blood, but became family through choice and sacrifice." Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Mrs. Walsh, I don't doubt your good intentions, but Maya has made her wishes clear. She feels safe with Mr. Brennan. She trusts him, and after everything she's endured, her sense of safety has to be the priority." Judge Hartfield turned to Jack. "Mr. Brennan, I'm granting you temporary guardianship for 6 months. During that time, you will enroll Maya in school, ensure she receives regular medical checkups, and work with a therapist to address her trauma. Jennifer Rhodes will conduct monthly home visits. If at the end of 6 months Maya is thriving and you've met all requirements, we'll revisit permanent custody." Jack's knees nearly gave out. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Don't thank me yet. This is a trial period. If I see any indication that Maya isn't receiving proper care, I won't hesitate to reverse this decision. Is that understood?" "Yes, Your Honor, completely. Mrs. Walsh, you're granted visitation rights, 2 afternoons per month, supervised by Miss Rhodes. Maya needs to know her family history, and you deserve the chance to build a relationship with your granddaughter." Eleanor nodded stiffly. "Thank you, Your Honor. Court is adjourned." The gavel came down, and Jack pulled Maya close. She was crying now, but they were tears of relief. They'd won. Not permanently, not yet, but for now, they'd won. Outside the courthouse, people approached with mixed reactions. Some offered congratulations, others just stared. Sarah hugged them both. "You did it," she said. "I knew you would." "We did it," Jack corrected, looking at Maya. "This brave kid right here, she's the one who convinced them." Sheriff Harding shook Jack's hand. "Glad it worked out. Maya's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Jack said. Eleanor Walsh approached slowly. Up close, Jack could see the resemblance between her and Maya, the same brown eyes, the same delicate features. "Mr. Brennan," she said formally. "Mrs. Walsh. I want you to know I'm not trying to take her away out of spite. She's my granddaughter, my only connection to my daughter. I just want to know her." Jack studied her carefully. "Then you'll have that chance. Maya deserves to know where she comes from, but she also deserves to decide who her family is. Blood doesn't always mean belonging." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to understand that." She looked at Maya. "Hello, sweetheart." Maya pressed closer to Jack but whispered, "Hi. I look forward to getting to know you better." "Okay," Maya said uncertainly. Eleanor left, and Jack and Maya walked to his truck. The old Chevy had made the trip down the mountain that morning, complaining the whole way but making it. Can we go home now? Maya asked. Yes, sweetheart, let's go home. The drive back up the mountain felt different, lighter somehow. Spring had fully arrived in the 3 months since Jack had found Maya. The trees were green, wildflowers dotted the meadows, and the creeks ran full with snowmelt. When they reached the cabin, Maya ran inside and immediately climbed to her loft, returning with a drawing she'd made that morning. I made this in case we won, she said, handing it to Jack. It showed the cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, mountains in the background, and 2 stick figures holding hands. Above them, she'd written in careful letters, "Our forever home." Jack's throat closed. It's perfect. Is it true? Can this be our forever home? If you want it to be. I do. I want to stay here with you and learn everything you can teach me and maybe get a dog someday and just be normal. Jack laughed. I'm not sure life on a mountain with a hermit counts as normal, kid. It's normal for us, Maya said. That's what matters. The months that followed were challenging but rewarding. Jack enrolled Maya in Coldwater Elementary School, which meant hiking down the mountain every morning and back up every afternoon. It was exhausting, but worth it to see Maya slowly open up to other children, make friends, bring home art projects and spelling tests. She struggled at first. Years of missed education left her behind her peers, but Sarah tutored her 3 times a week, and Maya worked harder than any 6-year-old should have to. By the end of the school year, she'd caught up enough to move forward with her class. The nightmares persisted for months. Maya would wake screaming about the cold, about being alone, about her mother never coming back. Each time Jack was there, he'd hold her and tell her stories about the mountain, about the animals, about all the adventures they'd have tomorrow. Slowly, the nightmares became less frequent. Eleanor's visits were awkward at first. She'd arrive at Jennifer's office where the supervised visits took place, and Maya would cling to Jack's hand, reluctant to engage. But Eleanor was patient. She brought books and read to Maya. She told stories about Rebecca as a little girl before the addiction took hold. And gradually, Maya began to warm to her. She's sad, Maya told Jack after the 4th visit. She misses Mama. I'm sure she does. Do you think Mama's okay? Wherever she is. Jack hesitated. The truth about Rebecca had come out during the investigation. She'd died 3 days after abandoning Maya, a drug overdose in a motel room 2 states away. The police had identified her body, but the connection to Maya hadn't been made until weeks later. Jennifer had recommended waiting to tell Maya, letting her adjust to her new life first. But Jack knew the question would come eventually. Maya, there's something I need to tell you about your mama. She looked up at him with those knowing eyes. She's not coming back, is she? No, sweetheart, she's not. Your mama died the week after she left you. The police found her in a different town. Maya was quiet for a long time. Then softly, was it the drugs? Yeah, it was. Did it hurt? I don't think so. I think she just went to sleep. Maya nodded slowly, processing. I should be sad, but I'm not really. Is that bad? No, Jack said gently. Your mama hurt you a lot. You don't have to feel sad about losing someone who wasn't there for you. But maybe someday you can feel sad about the mama you wish you'd had. The one who should have protected you and loved you the way you deserved. Will Eleanor be sad? Probably. Rebecca was her daughter, even though they weren't close. Then I'll be nice to her, because I know what it's like to lose people you love. Jack pulled her close. You're a good kid, Maya, the best kid. 6 months passed faster than Jack expected. The follow-up hearing was brief. Judge Hartfield reviewed Jennifer's reports, met with Maya privately, and examined Jack's records of school enrollment, medical visits, and therapy sessions. Mr. Brennan, she said, you've exceeded every expectation. Maya has gained 15 pounds, her academic performance is improving, and her therapist reports significant progress in processing her trauma. Most importantly, she's happy. I can see it in the way she talks about you, about her life, about her future. Jack held his breath. Therefore, I'm granting you permanent legal guardianship of Maya Walsh, with the option to pursue formal adoption if that's something you both wish. The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Sarah was crying. Jennifer was smiling. Even Eleanor, sitting in the back, looked pleased. "Thank you, Your Honor," Jack said, his voice thick. "I promise I won't let her down." "See that you don't. But Mr. Brennan, I don't think that's something we need to worry about. You've already proven what kind of man you are. Now it's just about continuing to be that man." Maya threw herself into Jack's arms, and he lifted her up, holding her tight. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did it." "Yeah, kid, we really did." 1 year after Jack found Maya in the snow, they stood together at the spot where the abandoned cabin had once been. The structure had collapsed completely over the winter, just a pile of rotting wood now. "Hard to believe this is where it started," Jack said. Maya nodded. She looked so different from the dying child he'd carried through the blizzard. Her cheeks were full and rosy, her eyes bright, her hair shiny and healthy. She wore a warm coat Jack had bought her, proper boots, and she'd grown at least 3 inches. "Jack?" she said. "Yeah?" "Do you ever wish you'd just walked past that day, that you'd gone home instead of looking for me?" "Never, not even once." "Really? Because your life would be quieter, simpler." "Quieter, maybe, but empty. Maya, you gave me a reason to wake up, a reason to care about tomorrow. Before you, I was just existing. Now I'm living. That's a gift I can never repay." "You saved my life," Maya said. "I think that counts as payment." Jack smiled. "How about we call it even? You saved mine too, in a different way." They hiked back to the cabin through meadows filled with wildflowers. Maya had learned all their names now: Columbine, Indian paintbrush, Wild Iris. She collected a bouquet as they walked, chattering about a book she'd read at school, about her friend Emma, named after Jack's daughter, though Maya didn't know that yet, and about whether they could really get a dog like Jack had promised. The cabin came into view, smoke rising from the chimney where Jack had left a fire burning. He'd added a new porch over the winter, and Maya had helped paint it green. Her drawings covered one wall inside, a gallery of her life over the past year. That evening, they sat together on the porch steps watching the sun set, a ritual they'd developed. The sky burned orange and pink, painting the mountains in warm light. "Jack," Maya said, "can I ask you something?" "Always. When you adopt me, will I be Maya Brennan?" Jack's heart stuttered. They'd talked about adoption, but hearing her say it so matter-of-factly still caught him off guard. "If you want to be. You can keep Walsh as a middle name if you want to honor your mama and your grandmother." Maya considered this. "Maya Walsh Brennan. I like that. It's all my stories together, where I came from and where I belong now." "That's perfect, sweetheart. And when people ask about my family, I can tell them about Eleanor and about Mama, but also about you and about Emma and Sarah, and even your grandfather who taught you all the mountain stuff." "That's a pretty big family." "Good. I never had a family before. Now I have lots." They sat in comfortable silence as stars began to appear. A deer emerged from the tree line, and Maya pointed it out in quiet excitement. Jack had taught her to move slowly, to respect the animal's space, and she'd become remarkably good at wildlife watching. "You know what's weird?" Maya said after a while. "What?" "Everyone said I wouldn't survive. The men in the store, probably doctors if they'd seen me, maybe even you when you first found me. Everyone thought I was going to die." "But you didn't." "No, because you didn't give up. Even when it seemed impossible, you kept trying." She looked up at him. "Why?" Jack thought about how to answer. "Because impossible just means nobody's done it yet, and because you deserved someone who'd fight for you. Every kid deserves that." "I'm glad it was you." "Me too, kid, me too." As fall approached and Maya prepared to start second grade, Jack found himself doing something he hadn't done in 13 years. He drove to Denver. Maya came with him, curious about the city where Jack had lived his old life. They parked at a cemetery on the outskirts, and Jack led her through rows of headstones until they reached 2 matching granite markers: Sarah Brennan, Emma Brennan. Maya read the names carefully. "Your family." "Yeah. Can I say hi to them?" Of course. Maya knelt in front of Emma's stone. Hi, Emma. I'm Maya. I live with your dad now. He's really good at taking care of people. I bet he was really good at taking care of you, too. I wish I could have met you. I think we would have been friends. She stood and moved to Sarah's stone. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for sharing Jack with me. I promise I'll take really good care of him. Jack's eyes burned. He knelt beside the graves and placed wildflowers he and Maya had picked that morning. Sarah, Emma, I want you to meet someone very special. This is Maya. She's my daughter now, not by blood but by choice. I think you'd both love her. She's brave and kind and funny, and she saved my life without even knowing it. He touched Emma's stone gently. I'll never stop missing you, baby girl. Never stop wishing I could have protected you. But I got a second chance with Maya, and I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to be the father to her that I wish I could have been to you for longer. Maya slipped her hand into his. Are they proud of you for saving me? I hope so. I like to think they had something to do with me finding you. Maybe Emma whispered in my ear that day, told me to go looking. I believe that, Maya said. Angels do that, right? Help people. If there are angels, your big sister Emma is definitely one. They stayed for a while longer, then drove back to the mountain. The city didn't feel like home anymore. Home was a cabin at the top of the world, where a little girl who'd survived the impossible was learning to fly. 2 years after that terrible blizzard, Jack stood in the Coldwater courthouse again. But this time, there was no anxiety, no fear of losing Maya. This time, they were making it official. Judge Hartfield smiled down at them from the bench. Maya Walsh Brennan, do you want Jack Brennan to be your legal father? Yes, Maya said clearly, loudly, more than anything. And Jack Brennan, do you want Maya Walsh to be your legal daughter? Yes, Your Honor, absolutely. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Colorado, I finalize this adoption. Maya, you are now officially Jack Brennan's daughter. Congratulations to you both. The small crowd erupted in applause. Sarah was crying again. She'd become the official grandmother figure in Maya's life. Eleanor was there too, smiling through her own tears. She and Maya had developed a good relationship, seeing each other twice a month, sharing stories, building their own connection. Maya hugged Jack so tight he could barely breathe. I'm yours for real now. Forever. You were always mine, kid. The paperwork just makes it official. They celebrated at the diner in Coldwater, the whole town showing up to congratulate them. People who'd once whispered about the strange mountain man now patted Jack on the back and told him how proud they were. Maya ate chocolate cake and told anyone who'd listen about her new last name. That night, back at the cabin, Jack tucked Maya into bed, a nightly ritual they'd never outgrown. Dad? Maya said. She'd started calling him that after the adoption was finalized. Yes, sweetheart? Do you remember what you told me the first night when I was sick? I told you a lot of things. You said you wouldn't let me go, that you'd fight for me. And you did. You kept your promise. I'll always keep my promises to you. I know, that's why I want to make you one. She sat up, serious. I promise that I'll always try my hardest. At school, at being good, at being the kind of daughter you deserve. And I promise I'll never forget that you chose me when nobody else did. Jack's voice was rough. Maya, you don't have to earn your place here. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. That's all I've ever wanted. I know, but I want to anyway. Because you taught me that love isn't just feelings. It's showing up. It's keeping promises. It's fighting even when things are hard. And I want to love you the way you love me. Jack pulled her into his arms. You already do, kid. Every single day. Years passed. Maya grew tall and strong, confident in ways that 6-year-old frozen girl could never have imagined. She became an honor student, joined the Junior Ranger program, learned to track animals and identify every plant on the mountain. She brought friends home from school, and their laughter filled the cabin that had once known only silence. She never forgot where she came from. Every year on the anniversary of the day Jack found her, they hiked to the spot where the old cabin had been and laid flowers, a reminder of how far she'd come, how close she'd been to losing everything. I used to wonder why I survived, Maya said on one of these visits, now 14 years old. Why I got a second chance when other kids in bad situations don't. It felt unfair. What do you think now? I think maybe I survived so I could help other kids like me, so I could show them that things can get better, that there are good people in the world who won't give up on you. Jack smiled. You'd make a good social worker or a therapist. Maybe. Or maybe I'll be a paramedic like you were, save people who everyone else thinks are beyond saving. You'd be amazing at that. I learned from the best. As the sun set over the mountains they both loved, Jack thought about the journey that had brought them here. He'd climbed this mountain 13 years ago to escape life, convinced his story was over. But he'd been wrong. His story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And the little girl who'd arrived at death's door had become the daughter who'd taught him how to live again. Anyone can change the world if they're willing to see the impossible as just another challenge to overcome. Sometimes the people who need saving end up being the ones who save us. And sometimes family isn't about blood or paperwork. It's about showing up in a blizzard when everyone else has given up. It's about fighting for someone who can't fight for themselves. It's about believing that every life is worth saving, even when the world says otherwise. Jack Brennan had been a broken man living in isolation, running from grief and guilt. Maya Walsh had been a dying child, abandoned and abused, with no reason to hope. But together they'd built something neither could have created alone. A family forged not in easy times, but in the hardest moments when survival itself seemed impossible. She hadn't just survived that terrible winter. She'd taught a mountain hermit that redemption was real, that second chances existed, and that love didn't die with loss. It transformed, making space for new stories, new hopes, new reasons to keep breathing. And somewhere in heaven, Jack liked to think Emma and Sarah were smiling, proud of the man he'd become and the daughter he'd found in the snow. Because sometimes the greatest miracles happen in the quietest places, where mountains meet the sky, where strangers become family, and where hope refuses to die even in the coldest winter. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering hope with us. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe some people are worth fighting for, even when the whole world says to walk away.